But it is 5:40, so I want to go ahead and make sure I make good use of everybody's time. Again, my name is Andrew Askovich. I'm a trainer for the Institute for Curriculum Services. I want to thank everybody so much for choosing to come and participate in this evening's session on the history of European anti-Semitism and the longest hatred. I was a high school history teacher on the south side of Chicago for 14 years. I taught everything from world history, US history, contemporary American history, civics, consumer education, as well as we had an international baccalaureate program, so theory of knowledge, approaches to learning, things like that. As a service learning coordinator at my school, I had a great experience teaching, but for the last several years now, I've been working with the Institute for Curriculum Services, presenting professional development to teachers, which again has been a great experience. In this last year, I've, as many of us have, I'm sure, but I spent most of this last year in my house presenting to teachers virtually through Zoom, just like we're doing this evening. So I hope that I'm able to continue to meet your needs and provide an engaging session for everybody. I very much miss attending these conferences in person. I was very much, I was talking to Christy earlier, I was really excited to make it up to Traverse City. I'd never been there. So I was really looking forward to get to that conference last spring. So hopefully I'll still make it up there at some point. All right, so again, if anybody has any questions, by all means, go ahead and I'll try and monitor the chat as well, or you can go ahead and just interrupt me. But we're going to go ahead and get started with history of European anti-Semitism. Session objectives. We're going to just spend a minute or so getting to know who we are at ICS. We'll go over the term anti-Semitism, trace the trajectory of what we're calling here the longest hatred, and then focus on the complexity and persistence throughout. Again, during the session, we are a consortium member of the Library of Congress Teaching with Primary Sources program. So we like to point out, all the great resources that the Library of Congress has made available for teachers, and we'll definitely go ahead and analyze primary sources during this session. And at the end, again, one thing I know that as a teacher, I always appreciated when I attended professional development, is when I had something I could actually bring back into my class. I mean, I think that we've done a nice job of that with this session, where there's a full lesson plan, as well as handouts that you can use, what we call a gallery walk, as well as most of the slides that I'm sharing with you, you can find up on our website and share them with your students as well. Again, if you have any questions during this session, please do just let me know. But we're going to go ahead quickly with just a couple notes on ICS. We're a nonprofit education initiative based out of San Francisco. Again, I'm in Chicago. I'm the Midwest trainer for the organization. We are dedicated, the mission of the organization is dedicated to improving the quality of K-12 education on Jews, Judaism, Jewish history, and Israel in the United States. And we do this by developing standards-aligned curricula and training teachers around the country. We believe an excellent education is essential to building a strong civil society where all people can flourish and students can engage as active and productive global citizens. I feel strongly that this session here on the history of European anti-Semitism plays a role in that, in helping, giving our students the education that they need. As an organization, we have all kinds of conference presentations like we have tonight. I'm going to be presenting again on Friday and Saturday. So we go to as many of the state social studies conferences as we can, as well as the National Council for Social Studies, National Council for History Education. We provide workshops and trainings for school districts. There's no cost for any of this. So if you work for a district or a school that you think something like this would be beneficial to your teachers, by all means, please get in touch with me and we can do something like that for your school. We have summer institutes where we go a little bit more in depth in some of the topics that we have. About teaching the Arab-Israeli conflict with primary sources, as well as other online opportunities. Again, all the different sessions are listed here, from topics like teaching the Arab-Israeli conflict, which I'll be presenting on Friday, along with environmental cooperation as a path to peace. Religion and Politics in the Middle East is another session that we offer. History of Anti-Semitism, of course, is this what we're doing right now. And then sessions on ancient Israelite civilization. And then on Saturday, I'm also going to be presenting why and how to teach religion in the classroom. In addition to that, we have a couple other sessions that we do exploring strategies to analyze primary sources, as well as helping teachers energize their digital teaching, which I know not everybody, but many teachers are still having to do some remote teaching, virtual teaching. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with anti-Semitism. So contemporary anti-Semitism, just a word on this. A recent report from the United Nations, this was back in September 2019, stated that anti-Semitism expressed through acts of discrimination, intolerance, or violence towards Jews violates a number of human rights, including the rights to freedom of religion or belief. And again, we've seen in recent years attacks on synagogues, schools, desecrations of Jewish cemeteries, this Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt that made appearance at the US Capitol riots back in January. So we know this is something that has not gone away and continues to appear in the news. And I think it's something that definitely our students would need a better understanding of. I think that oftentimes some of the only understanding of Judaism or Jewish history that students get in school is through learning about the Holocaust. And one thing I think this session is really important is that it gives students kind of that background information to understand that anti-Semitism did not begin and end with the Holocaust. Thank you, Jill. Yeah, so we've had this session on Saturday on world religions. So if there's anything I can offer you for that, please do join us then. Okay, analyzing history of European anti-Semitism with the Library of Congress tools. Are we familiar with this handout? Have you guys seen this before? Analyzing the guide from the Teaching with Primary Sources program. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat box. It's real simple, loc.gov/teachers. And they have some great tools to help you analyze and help your students analyze primary sources. So if you haven't used those before, I strongly encourage you to take a look at that. They use this kind of observe, reflect, question model. And I want to go ahead and start with that. And so this is kind of what the handout looks like. We're using those questions with this primary source political cartoon that we see here right now. And again, either in the chat box or if you want to go ahead and unmute, please do that as well. But I want to start with just these first questions of observe. What do you see in this picture? Describe the figure, the details, the physical setting. I'll give you a moment or two to take a look at that. And again, either in the chat box or if anybody wants to unmute, share what you see.
It almost looks like almost Nazi propaganda, but you can tell that it's in Spanish, which kind of throws me off.
Yeah, it's French actually.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I had that same. So it's a French magazine here, Libre Parole, which I believe, if I remember right, just translates to free speech. Does anybody can correct my French? I'm almost positive. That's what it was. Yeah, but yeah, Nazi propaganda. Yeah, definitely. And then we see from the source information that this was a long time before the Nazis, right? We see this is October 1893. Any other comments or thoughts on this image?
It looks kind of, the figure there looks like almost like animalistic, kind of like he's crawling like an animal would.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll keep my camera off. I got dogs all over the place.
No problem.
Bark. Sorry about that. But I would just comment that the stereotypical things that you see that you see in later Nazi propaganda, like the nose, and then the conquering the earth kind of image.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments? From there, we get into the reflect, right? So there's the observe, reflect question. what's the historical context? You already mentioned some of the stereotypes here of the conquering the world. Questions of who might the audience be for this magazine? Can we see the translation of I'm not going to try and speak French, but of what the title of the cartoon is? I think Jill, I don't know if you were trying to say something, you were muted.
Oh, no, but yeah, it says, it means le patrie, their homeland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you speak French, yeah?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
no? Well,
Un petit peu.
yeah, the accent was great.
Um,
Yeah, so their homeland. So what do you think that refers to? What is the context of this?
Seems like their homeland would be the entire world.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I noticed it's like the sun is setting too, and I wonder if there's something to do with that,
Sure.
the idea that it's the end of perhaps the end of an age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's great. Yeah, the Jews are conquering the world, right? The idea that their homeland is the world. What do we see coming from like the pockets of the man?
And there's coins.
Yeah. So
There's a lot of stereotypes here.
Yeah, the stereotypes of the association of Jews with money. At the same time, though, like look at the clothes. How do we
I was
describe
just thinking that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he doesn't have rich clothing on. I mean, it's
Right. Yeah, so kind of like the raggedy clothing, yet at the same time, the stealing of the money, or has the money, right? And then finally, does this lead to any questions? What does this make us wonder?
I'm not familiar with like the time period in anti-Semitism at all. It's like not my background, but it kind of makes me wonder if there's movement of populations going on, and like a threat of, are they going to come here next?
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, we kind of use this as like an introductory thing, and I get it. I haven't given you any of the information yet, and we're definitely going to do that in just a moment. So we'll cover all this material in the next half hour or so that we have together. But yeah, this question of like, what's going on here? What are they concerned with? What are the Jews trying to do? Thank you. Okay. I hope you see how you could use this strategy that the Library of Congress Teaching with Primary Sources program has developed of analyzing anything from a political cartoon to other images. Again, I strongly encourage you, if you haven't used that, to use that method of I think you can work with students of all ages and of all academic levels by just getting, putting something in front of them and asking them, what do they see? Okay. So let's get into the term anti-Semitism. So the term is simply, prejudice against or hatred of Jews, right? It's pretty clear where that term comes from and where it meant. We see it first in writings by Wilhelm Marr in 1879 in an anti-Jewish pamphlet. He's really advancing the Jews, and again, this gets into social Darwinism, which we'll talk a little bit more later in the presentation. But really just advancing this idea that Jews are a distinct racial group, both physically and morally inferior to the German Aryan, right? He goes ahead and is accusing wealthy Jews of trying to dominate Germany economically. And this is all very much, where the term came from, this idea that Wilhelm Marr was even going so far as to start a political party in Germany of the anti-Jew, the anti-Semitism party in Germany at this time period. You may have noticed I have so I got to make sure I have a couple of people in the waiting room. I got to make sure that I notice that if anybody has a trouble, if you get kicked out for some reason, I'll make sure that I let you back in. But quickly here with anti-Semitism, you may have noticed that. Or I don't know, has anybody seen anti-Semitism written the way that I have it here on the screen, where there is no hyphen and it's all lowercase? Has anybody noticed that before? Or has anybody noticed that at all?
I don't think I paid attention,
Yeah.
sadly.
No, but I would so in the media
I
today,
noticed.
so when you see it in newspapers and magazines, and in most textbooks, you're very much still going to see anti-Semitism with a hyphen. and you're going to see the S capitalized, as if Semitism is a racial group. And that's where this comes from, right? This idea that there was this pseudoscientific racial category of there are these Semites, and the anti-Semites were against the Semites. But we know that that's not what the term is. The term was very much not against those who spoke the Semitic languages. It wasn't an anti-Arab or an Aramaic. It was very much, the term was and has always been anti-Jew. That's what anti-Semitism means. So to kind of like get away from that confusion and this idea that there is no Semitic people that we refer to in really at any point in history. To clear all that up, our organization, as well as many other organizations, have begun to kind of rewrite and reframe how we spell anti-Semitism by taking out the hyphen, and by no longer capitalizing the S in Semitism. Okay, so just a couple things that you may notice in this presentation. So the four historical forms of anti-Semitism. There was a scholar, William Brustein, out of West Virginia, who wrote a book on this and talked about the four historical roots of anti-Semitism being the religious, economic, political, and racial. And during this session, we're going to very much kind of trace how we see anti-Semitism changes throughout history, and we see elements of this repeating time and time again. So long before we had the term anti-Semitism, we very much had what we see here is anti-Judaism. This idea that Jews were singled out as a group that was different, a group that was couldn't be trusted, that there was the suspect group of people who had a religion that made them different from other groups, and this idea that and because of that there was a lot of persecution against Jews. And we see this even before the Roman Empire, but during the Roman Empire, before the birth of Christianity, Jews were very much singled out as being this strange group of people who were refusing to accept the Roman gods, right? They're monotheists. They are refusing to intermarry as when the Romans would go and conquer people, those people would pretty much just become Romans. Well, Jews refused to do that. They had their own dietary laws that they abided by, which kept them separate from the rest of the Roman population. And then the practices of refusing to work once a week, right? This idea, of course, there was no weekend back in the Roman Empire, yet Jews said that they had this day of rest, this Sabbath day, right? And what Jews today call Shabbat, was something that was made them seem as this strange group of people and couldn't be trusted. And then this was even back then seen as this barbaric, the covenant of Jews of circumcision, this ritual was seen as, again, something that it was very easy at that time to tell who was the Jew by just finding out who was circumcised and who wasn't. And that was something, again, that set Jews apart from other groups. Next, of course, we have the beginning of Christianity. So we know Jesus is born and lived as a Jew from Galilee. At the time period that Jesus lived, we know that we don't have any written records. So all the writings and the New Testament, all that's going to come, the Gospels will come after the time of Jesus. During his lifetime, we know that it began as a small movement around oral teachings. And at the very beginning, the followers of Jesus was simply just one of many sects of Judaism. So that there are many groups that were practicing Judaism different ways. And at the very beginning, there was no Christianity. There was just the followers of Jesus, and they were practicing Judaism in a different way from other Jews. We start to see, though, as the Gospels are written, and as we start to see, the oral tradition become a written tradition, the New Testament, and this is where we start to see, again, completed after the, maybe in the century after Jesus lived, and we start to see, especially in the in the more recent, or the Gospels are written later, we start to see more of an anger expressed toward Jews who refused to accept Jesus as Messiah. We start to again see that Jews are blamed for the death of Jesus, which we'll call, of course, deicide. This idea that the Jews were responsible for the crucifixion, not the Romans, is something that the church today is very much is no longer states or no longer claims to be the case. But for centuries, that was the case, that the Jews are blamed for the death of Jesus. And again, we start to see in the New Testament many examples where Jews begin to be associated with the devil. Again, Jews were this strange group, unwilling to accept Jesus and even being the cause of Jesus's death. So the Jewish diaspora. So with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE, Jews are exiled from what was their homeland, Judea. And it's over the next centuries, we start to see that populations of Jews begin to grow in areas throughout the Middle East, other areas throughout the Middle East, as well as North Africa and Southern Europe. Early Christianity, we start to see a disassociation. So Jews are no longer, or we start to see that Christians are no longer seeing themselves as Jews. Christians are a different group of people. Again, this focus on the portrayal of Jews being responsible for Jesus' death becomes more and more prominent and more important. It's in 313 CE where we see Constantine will declare Christianity first the privileged religion. And at that moment, Jews are then disloyal subjects of the empire. We start to see in Augustine of Hippo calls Jews a wicked sect which should be driven into permanent exile. And the reason why I have that quote here is because, again, we see this centuries ago. We're going to see that quote is going to appear again and again, or different versions of that quote will appear during the time of Martin Luther, and then of course during the time of Adolf Hitler. This idea of Jews being need to be driven out. So Christianity and the Roman Empire. So in 380 CE, Theodosius I will make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. Christian at this time will really gain political power over Jews and begin to write the laws. And so we'll start to see a change in how Jews are no longer accepted as part of the empire. Christianity very much becomes a unifying force with really the complex church, hierarchical church organization that we'll see for centuries. Again, this is very much the time of anti-Judaism, right? This idea that there's an increase in Christianity throughout the empire, and we start to see this relationship that really continues up until the 20th century, where most of the places where Jews are going to live, Christians will be making the laws. And we start to see all kinds of restricted laws that, again, will continue for many centuries. The idea that Christians will be forbidden by law to converting to Judaism or attending Jewish worship services. This idea of intermarriage being, again, written into law, that Christians and Jews cannot marry. Things such as Jews cannot possess Christian slaves, Jews are barred from public office, the prohibition of building synagogues, and then in court, Jews cannot offer testimony against Christians. I think it's interesting that we'll see, again, the way that the Jews are treated throughout much of this time period. We can see this with other racial groups in the United States, with African Americans, and the way that the Jim Crow laws are written as restrictive laws, or other groups in different societies in different time periods. But we see, again, this continues for centuries, the way that the relationship between Christians and Jews here. So again, earlier we had the observe, reflect question. This is very similar, the see, think, connect. I would like us to just take a look at, and again, whether in the chat box, or if you would rather do it, if you don't want to unmute yourself, what do you see in this image here? So we have two statues, and these statues will appear in front of many churches or cathedrals throughout Europe, throughout the Middle Ages, and many of them will still be there today. But what do we notice with these two statues?
Well, like I don't know if they're the same person. I mean, they seem similar,
Yeah. So we see. So
but
one of them is ecclesia, and the other is synagoga. So these are the
oh, I
ecclesia.
see. It says it on the
Yeah.
bottom. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Got it. Okay. Oh, so the one represents Christianity and the other one represents Judaism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see the cross,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then that
So we
would
see
be so that would be a
cross.
scroll then.
Yeah. Exactly. A
The other
cross and
one
then a
is-
scroll. Yeah.
And they're both crowned.
They're both crowned. I have another, and I'm not. You guys will tell me what you think. I've this version. I was trying to find a better version of the statues. Let me see if I can.
But it was interesting that the one, signifying Judaism is blindfolded.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. So we see the
Um,
blindfold over synagogue.
mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In other versions, sometimes we'll see it's almost like the statue or the text or the scrolls are falling out of the hands or slipping out of the hands of synagogue.
Hmm.
Do we notice the staff of synagogue? What can we see what's going on there?
Is it broken?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't like I couldn't quite tell whether that was whether it was a staff or a scroll or
Yeah.
couldn't quite tell. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So what does this make us think? And if you were to go into a cathedral and you'd see these two statues, what are these statues telling you? What do they say?
Well, the one on the right seems very powerless.
Yeah.
She can't see. She can't. What she has is broken.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's just the image, but I don't know if there's any meaning. Like there are kind of stripes or lines across her, and I don't know whether that's just the image or whether there's
Yeah,
something
you know what?
to
That's a
that.
really good question. I've tried to find better statues because all those statues don't have that. And I
Okay.
haven't figured out why that one does.
Okay.
But it's a good question.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, we see ecclesia. Sometimes people comment that seems almost serene or almost like smiling or content. And
Mhm.
then synagogue is blindfolded, right? The idea that ecclesia is definitely the truth or is the answer, and then Judaism is blind to truth, right? Again, that's just one interpretation
Mhm.
you may have here. Okay. Any other comments or questions on these statues?
I wonder what synagogue is holding in her left hand down there toward.
Yeah, sure. I think that's usually, and again, sometimes you'll see it almost as like a Torah scroll. So like the Jewish scriptures or
Okay.
the Hebrew Bible. And again, sometimes you'll see it almost falling out of her hand. In other versions as well, you'll see the crown of synagogue falling off her head.
Oh wow.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay. So again, these are images that you're going to see or statues that you'll see throughout Europe, even to this day. Compulsory segregation of Jews. So we know that Jews are going to be marginalized and forced to live in separate areas of towns, excluded from all activities in mainstream society. This is where we start to see the Jewish ghetto, right? The idea that Jewish quarters, and we start to see again in different parts of Europe throughout the Middle Ages, but where there'll be the Jewish quarter, the Jewish street. Jews are very much sectioned off from the rest of society, from the Christian world. Excuse me. We have quotes like this from the Lateran Council of 1215, which decree that such Jews of both sexes in every Christian province and at all times shall be marked off in the eyes of the public from other peoples through their character of their dress. So with this idea that, how are we going to make sure that we can tell who the Jews are, because the Jew is not to be trusted? And we start to see a badge appear. I think many of us are probably familiar with the idea that in Nazi Germany, Jews are wearing a yellow star. That didn't come from nowhere, right? This is,
Right.
centuries ago, Jews were wearing a yellow circle. Again, a badge to identify them, or a special hat to identify them as being Jewish. And we start to see, again, Jews being associated with money and greed. and this very much comes out of this idea that the church, Christianity, is going to prohibit usury, money lending with higher interest. Jews are not going to be allowed to be members of craft guilds. They're not going to be allowed to own land throughout much of Europe. Because of that, serving as merchants and serving as kind of the banks for the kings and princes and other wealthy Christians becomes, excuse me, one of the few jobs or one of the few areas in which Jews are allowed to work. And they start to increasingly fill that role. And it seems to be that is where Jews start to get the attachment of being greedy, and that there very much comes out of that. Again, the Jew becomes the tax collector for the nobles. The Crusades, again, we have this quote here: "The slaughter of Jews was done first by citizens of Cologne. These suddenly fell upon a small band of Jews and severely wounded and killed many. They destroyed the houses and synagogues of the Jews and divided among themselves a very large amount of money." So I'm sure many of us have probably taught about the Crusades, right? The idea that the Pope and the Europeans are going to come liberate the Holy Land, liberate Jerusalem. I don't know if everybody's aware or not, but that during this time period, many Jews were used almost as practice by the Crusaders as they would march their way into into Jerusalem, and kill the Jews that they would see and massacre the Jews that we see. And we know again that thousands of Jews were massacred during this time period. We start to again see these myths. I mentioned earlier in the New Testament, we start to see suggestions of Jewish association with the devil, and that's going to only increase and continue. We get all kinds of images like we see here of really disgusting images, but I don't know if you can see, but the Jew kind of like sucking from the sow, from the pig, and then the Jew almost is like half man, half monster, or with the Jew with the horn, right? This idea of Jew with horns very much did not go away. And again, when I went away to college, I happened to be Jewish. And I really didn't know much about that. And I had a roommate that grew up Catholic and was going to Catholic schools. And he would make jokes to me about horns. And I really didn't understand. And I don't think, he didn't mean anything by it. But I really didn't understand what he meant. But again, there's a long history, this association of, where's the horn on the Jew? And let me see your horns. The stories very much have not gone away. And again, we see this spread throughout the Middle Ages. The idea that Jews are accused of spreading the Black Death or the plague. Jews are accused of ritual murders. We'll talk about in a moment the blood libel. Again, there's associations with Jews being, part of the work of the devil or black magic or something. Those associations, and we start to see again, time and time again, violence against Jews increase, and at times it'll be spontaneous. At times, like we saw with the Crusades, it'll be more organized. So the blood libel myth. Again, these are all false stories that have been told about Jews and have been repeated about Jews for centuries. But this comes from the idea that during Passover, so for Holy, this often falls during Holy Week for Christians, so right around the time of Easter. For Jews, it's Passover. And the idea that Jews will have an unleavened bread called matzah, and stories were told that the Jews had to kill a Christian child and use their blood in the baking of the matzah, and that there'd be stories of a Christian boy falling into a well, or a Christian child disappearing around this time period, and then Jews being attacked and Jews accused of murder, Jews being accused of kidnapping. Again, here is an image of that in 1493, a woodcut on the famous story of the Simon of Trent, an Italian child his death was blamed on the leaders of the Jewish community. And we see again images like that repeated throughout history. That's the story of the blood libel. I mentioned earlier with the plague. So again, Jews accused of spreading the plague, and we have here again a woodcut. From the Nuremberg Chronicle of 1493, we see here Jews being burned alive. again, this is an image that you would find in hanging up in a cathedral or hanging up in a church. That this would just kind of be there as you know, this is how we treat Jews, and this is what happens to Jews in our town. That's something that we would see. Again, the Jews being accused of spreading the plague. So time and time again, we'll see Jews being expelled from different parts of Europe. Again, when needed economically, Jews are going to be tolerated, again, as merchants, as tax collectors, as banks. But we'll see again, and these are all dates when Jews are going to be expelled from different parts of Europe. Often coming from religious prejudice or sometimes just desires to confiscate Jewish property. We'll get to the point where Jews will, pretty much most of the world's Jews will end up in Poland by the 16th century, and I'll point that out in just a moment. 1492, of course, is famous in American history with Christopher Columbus. I don't know if we're all aware, but this is, of course, the same time period that Jews and then Muslims will be expelled from Spain with King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. So Poland and again, what's called the Pale of Settlement. Most of the world's Jews, again, will live in Poland, being expelled from other parts of Europe, so that by in the 16th century, again, 80% of the world's Jews will live in Poland. And this will remain for quite a while, up until the point of the beginning of World War II. The population of Poland the Jewish population of Poland is about 15%. In cities such like Warsaw and Krakow, it could be as high as even 25 to 30% of the population were Jews. Martin Luther, again, the Protestant Reformation. I remember, I would always be teaching about the 99, theses and everything else. This is something I never got to, and honestly, I didn't know all that much about. But we see here in 1543, Martin Luther wrote another text concerning the Jews and their lies. And we have quotes here from Martin Luther. "What then shall we Christians do with this damned, rejected race of Jews?" Again, Augustine of Hippo, right? Almost, a millennia earlier saying similar words. And again, these next words, I feel like you could see coming right out of Mein Kampf or coming right from Hitler. Their synagogues should be set on fire. Their homes should be broken down and destroyed. They should be deprived of their prayer books. The rabbis must be forbidden under their death to teach. Passports and traveling privileges should be forbidden. They have to be stopped from usury. All of their cash and valuables of silver and gold ought to be taken. If there's any danger of Jews doing harm to their Gentile overlords, let us drive them out of their country for all time. Away with them. So again, these thoughts, these ideas of Jews being this wicked race, is something that doesn't begin with Martin Luther. Of course, it doesn't begin with Hitler. It was something that was very much part of European history, European culture for centuries. Just a quick thing on Shakespeare. So one of course, Shakespeare's most famous plays is The Merchant of Venice, and this centers around Shylock, a story of a Jewish moneylender who demands contract for a pound of flesh, be paid back in full. I think one thing that's really interesting about this is that there were no Jews in Shakespeare for centuries. There were no Jews living in England for centuries by the time Shakespeare is born. Yet at the same time, these stereotypes about Jews as being greedy is very much present in this time period in Elizabethan England, right? And Shakespeare is very much going to continue those stereotypes of Jews. So we start to see things change and get a little bit better for Jews during the time of the Emancipation. During the time of the Enlightenment. We start to see many people call the emancipation of the Jews, where Jews begin to be treated more equally, have all kinds of new freedoms, the time period of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. Jews are now more accepted into the different phases of European life. They're allowed to leave those ghettos and assimilate. The belief seems to be that many Europeans and Enlightenment writers and those that were kind of advocating for this believe that when they would emancipate the Jews would simply turn their back on Judaism, just become Christians like everybody else. And that oftentimes did not happen, right? The idea that Jews would assimilate, but at the same time would continue to hold on to their religious beliefs. That seems to have upset many Europeans at that time. Political assimilation. We start to see as Jews begin to migrate west from parts of Eastern Europe, where there was more persecution. There's begins to question, and this is around that time period where we saw that first political cartoon of 1893, where we start to see more and more Jews coming into places like France. And these Jews, people begin to question these Jews as the unwanted foreigner. Jews very much become the accusations of disloyal citizens. And we start to get those stereotypes and these accusations of Jews trying to take over the world. There's the famous Rothschild family, a very wealthy Jewish family who did go into the banking industry and set up banks throughout Europe. Stereotypes, persist to this day. This idea that the Rothschilds were trying to that there was this Jewish conspiracy to take over the world. And then we get it from both sides, right? The Jews are the capitalists, but at the same time, the Jews are the communists with the beginning of communism. So with this political anti-Semitism, we start to see the economic, the social, the political factors all playing a role here. We start to see success of Jews in different fields of science, finance, the arts. And at that time period, or when that happens, we start to see resentment on the population, the European population against those Jews. We have another great political cartoon here, Metamorphosis. An upstart Jew cannot change his true identity as readily as he changes his clothes and his name. Neither the Enlightenment nor emancipation would confer respectability nor hide his Jewish nose. We start to see, again, this is the same person, right? Moshe Pish becomes Maurice LaFontaine as he begins to become a little bit wealthier. He changes his clothes, but he very much still has that Jewish look, right? We start to see these stereotypes of the nose, with the Jewish nose. So again, we saw that earlier, that political cartoon. This is right about the time of the Dreyfus Affair. If you're not familiar with the Dreyfus Affair, this is a famous or a prominent Jewish captain in the French army is accused of being a spy. We know that it was not the case. He was not the one that was the spy, but he was at first convicted, eventually exonerated. But during that time period, we very much would get all kinds of accusations of Jews could not be trusted, Jews are not loyal. And we start to get, in France, start to get slogans like death to the Jews appearing in France during this time period. This idea that the accusations that Jews are traitors and cannot be good French citizens. Again, around the same time period, we'll start to see hundreds of thousands and maybe in the end, a couple million Jews will move and immigrate into the United States. A lot of this because of the pogroms in Russia, where Jews are going to be attacked simply for being Jewish by the Tsar. Around the same time period, we get the famous text, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Again, we know this to be a false, story, a forgery, a story of a conspiracy of Jews trying to take over the world. This story has not gone away. It's very much exists even to this day. You can still find copies of this text today. Just maybe a decade ago or so, there was even a miniseries, I believe in Egypt, that was written as if it was a real thing of Jews that are out there trying to take over the world. And of course, in Michigan, one of the most famous Michiganders, right? Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, went out and bought hundreds of thousands of copies and produced the Dearborn Independent, where he begins to spread the story of this Jewish conspiracy to take over the world. Eventually, there's a lawsuit. He has to kind of take it back, but he's very much mixed up in this idea of anti-Semitism and claiming that Jews are trying to destroy American society by their associations with unions, as well as the banking industry, as well as things like jazz music, right? The idea that Jews are this group that is not to be trusted. And then we start to see racial anti-Semitism, right? So this is with social Darwinism. The idea of eugenics comes out. Very much, throughout parts of England and the United States, we see a big movement here, but very much in Germany. This idea that there are these distinct races and these races differ from each other. Of course, this is going to all feed into the beliefs of Hitler with the Aryan race. This is going to continue again for many decades up into the 20th century. This is when Wilhelm Marr first coins the term anti-Semitism. Others like Houston Stewart Chamberlain talks about physically and mentally the Aryans are preeminent among all peoples. For that reason, they are by right the lords of the world. And we start to see, again, the scientific anti-Semitism or the pseudoscientific anti-Semitism, going back to, how can you identify who the Jew is? You must look at, the Jewish nose, the Jewish hair, and we must try and, identify the Jew. There is, of course, very much Jewish involvement in the Russian Revolution. Remember those pogroms. The Tsar wasn't very friendly to the Jews. Shouldn't be much of a surprise that the Jews were, willing and ready to fight to get rid of the Tsar. So again, this idea that this is accusations that the Russian Revolution was a Jewish conspiracy. The end of World War I, right? It's, of course, the Jew, and we see it again, this famous postcard from 1919. It's the Jew who's the reason why we have the Treaty of Versailles, the Weimar Republic, that the Germans are blamed for, losing World War I, and of course, forced to pay back billions of dollars. At the same time, Jews very much saw themselves as good German citizens, and we know that more Jews actually died fighting for Germany than any other, group of people. Thousands and tens of thousands of Jews fought proudly for the German army during World War I. And this is going to bring us all the way into Mein Kampf and Nazi Germany. We're pretty much running out of time, but this is, I'm sure we're a lot more familiar with the Holocaust, right? These are stories that we probably do teach our students, or many of us have taught our students. The Jewish boycotts, the Kristallnacht, the Nuremberg laws, all of these things are, again, I just want to make sure that we understand and reminder that this didn't come just from nowhere, right? The idea that all of this very much came from a long history of anti-Semitism throughout European history. I want to thank everybody so much for joining us. There's just a couple things. ICSresources.org is where you can find access to the lesson plan, to all of these slides, to a gallery walk, a bunch of other primary sources that you can use. I want to thank everybody again so much for your participation. I know I didn't give us a whole lot, I didn't give us much time at all to ask questions or to share any thoughts. If there is, and I think we're going to get clicked out of here in just 90 seconds or so. So I want to thank everybody so much for joining us. If anybody has a moment, I would really appreciate it if you could go to this bit.ly/ICS workshop. We have our own little survey that would just take a couple minutes to give us feedback to make sure I'm continuing to give you what you guys need during these sessions. In the remaining seconds that we have before the next group comes, does anybody have anything that they wanted to add? Any questions, any comments?
No, but thank you for all you've put together here.
Thank you so much. And again, have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of the conference. If you get a chance, join me again on Friday and or Saturday. My email is there as well. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great rest of your conference. I think I need to close out of this room, so whoever's coming up at 5:30, I forgot already what that session is, but so they're able to get in here, or 6:30, I'm sorry. All right, have a great day, everybody.